Well, I think there are a couple of urgent responses to that question. One is we've got to have communities, community-based agencies, other divisions of government come together, typically under the leadership of the mayor, and do a better job of coordinating to provide the supports and opportunities that students need in addition to improve school and school work. Secondly, we need to take an approach here that's not batch processing, mass production, the kind of factory model, one size fits all education system that we now have. We've got to personalize education. So we need to move to a case management model because students' experiences have been so widely different in this pandemic, and the responses to bringing them up to speed need to be tailored to their individual needs. So each child is going to need a success plan and an adult navigator within the school system to help that child get his or her needs met and make progress to be able to come to school ready to learn and take full advantage of the opportunities that school affords. Well, there have been a number of positives in remote learning. Schools have been very slow historically to adopt educational technology, and then suddenly overnight, the field was enforced. It was forced to embrace educational technology, and at first we had just an emergency response, which was pretty substandard, and gradually, I think schools and school systems have gotten better at this. So the top need right now, I think, is for more professional development to help teachers use and adapt the tools that they've become somewhat familiar with in the course of the pandemic and now don't want to abandon altogether just because they're returning to school, but want to apply those tools to the current learning challenges that they'll face in school. Second relates to the personalization of education. Some children will do better with remote learning. Also, remote learning gives students and teachers the opportunity to break through the barriers of time and place that lock us into schools. So I hope that we can use educational technology to make learning available virtually 24/7 to students, to make enrichment available, because we now know how to connect up with students via the internet in all the off-school hours. Students only spend 20% of their waking hours in school in a given year. So 80% of that time is underutilized for educational and enrichment purposes. And I think technology can help considerably there.